Dear respected teacher, dear noble community, today is Saturday, October the 12th in the year 2024, and we're sitting here in the Rising Tide Meditation Hall at Magnolia Grove Monastery, Batesville, Mississippi, in the retreat deemed as the power of silence, silent retreat. I hope everybody has been enjoying the silence so far. I myself have been enjoying. It's sometimes you never know what goes on during a silent retreat, but just through the power of community, it's a refreshing type of energy, a refreshing type of power. And it's so interesting to see. Yesterday, I had dinner a little late, and I was having dinner just while the community was washing up. And after I finished my meal, I sat there for a while because it felt like I was sitting during when we have our mindful meals, the 20 minutes of silence. And usually if at a different, our normal retreat, when we have the washing up, everybody's conversating, everybody's saying, hey, where do I put the pots? Where do I put the dishes? The communication like that. And it was just so interesting to see everybody working in silence, or just not physically speaking. And it was so beautiful because, one, you can kind of see that everybody was really practicing, trying not to ask, where do I put the dishes? Or where do I put the pots? But secondly, it was also, since maybe you've experienced these past couple of hours or this past day, is that when we cut off, per se, the speaking, our other senses get heightened, in a sense. So like our senses of the body, what goes on, our actions, our what we're seeing, maybe what we're seeing becomes more sensitive. So we see when somebody says, like, if I put the dish here, and then somebody goes, okay, that's where I put it. So we don't need to communicate physically, as we're learning now, but just seeing the community just work and just kind of just everybody doing their part. And it doesn't need to be through any kind of communication in terms of the speaking aspect, the mouth. And also thanks to our lovely organizing team for making sure that everybody knows what to do and everybody's in the right place. And I mean, maybe, it's not easy to organize something like this, especially when you're taking out an aspect of speaking. And so kudos to our organizing team for their lovely organization of the retreat. While I was sitting there yesterday, just seeing everyone working and servicing, everybody was doing it so like mindfully, or just from what I saw. I don't know if they actually internally were feeling mindful, but they were, placing things very mindfully and things. And then it reminded me of a story that I had with our teacher, Thay. And Thay said that meditation, it doesn't have to be slow. Mindfulness doesn't have to be slow. So here we talk a lot about like stopping and coming back to oneself. And if we do it slowly, it becomes more safe, it becomes more solid. So when we practice walking meditation, we're practicing slowly, being in touch with each step. Or when we're practicing sitting, or when we're practicing even just journaling, we're allowing ourselves to stop and return back to ourselves. And so, but I'm seeing just there's things that you can't work slow in, or you can't do slowly. And this story was, we were in the UK during a retreat in Nottingham. and all of a sudden we were going on walking meditation, and I was attending our teacher at that time, and it started to rain, and we didn't have an umbrella. The Sangha, well, actually, we had an umbrella for Thay, but the Sangha didn't have their own umbrellas. And so, it would, just to have an umbrella for Thay while everybody gets wet, I think it doesn't really, I don't think Thay really likes that. So he started to run. he just looked back at his attendants, and then he just running. And then the attendant, everybody's mindful, everybody's, coming back to the steps, and then all of a sudden, as the attendant, we're aware of what Thay's doing, but we didn't know what he was going to do. He just looked back, just kind of normally, we thought he was just appreciating the Sangha. And there was children and things like that. And with children, that makes it 10 times more fun. And so all of a sudden, Thay started running. And then, myself and the other attendant were lost amongst the children. And we see Thay is about maybe already 40 yards ahead of us. And we just start running. We start following Thay running. And then the community started running after Thay. It was fun. It was hilarious. And then when we got back to the place where we started, Thay looked back with this huge smile. And he said, "Thank you for joining running meditation with us." And so it was so beautiful, and it was just because sometimes we have this perception about what meditation or what the practice should be, but you just never know what happens in a certain situation or a certain moment in life, to where is your mindfulness practice, or where are we in that moment? We may be in the bustling city, like in New York, for example. I noticed when we were offering days of mindfulness in New York, our walking meditation pace is much faster, especially when you have police escort. And so it's very interesting, our practice of mindfulness. And I hope that you're enjoying the power of silence and noticing that for yourself. And so just being able to know that you can relax the mouth aspect and come back and discover life in a different way. Maybe you can find communication with nature. Here we're very fortunate and very lucky to have very beautiful nature to surround us. And so when I was walking to the hall this morning, I saw everyone enjoying the sun. I saw friends enjoying the grass, the shade, and it was just so beautiful because, everyone was journaling and coming back, and it was just people are returning to their human element. And it was just very beautiful. It was such a beautiful sight to see, and it's so good that we can come back to that and nourish this aspect of our human life. There's quite a lot I want to share today, so we'll see how far we go. But let's go ahead and have a refresher about what we learned yesterday. So yesterday, Sister Insight, Sister Trie, she touched on, she started to end the talk with the exercises of mindful breathing. And with that, she shared with us the first 6 exercises of mindful breathing. And this sutra, or this teaching on the full awareness of mindful breathing, yesterday Sister Trie mentioned that when Thay discovered this sutra, he was the happiest person. He felt like he was the happiest person in the world. And I want to give you a fun fact. In 2011, when Thay was here at Magnolia Grove Monastery, he actually gave a very similar talk, exactly where we're sitting right now, or maybe onto the right a little bit, because it used to be a big tent. But our teacher, he gave a talk on the full awareness of breathing. And so I have the great fortune, or feel very honored to repeat those words or just share the teachings through my lens and through my experience. And for myself, when I discovered the sutra, I wasn't the happiest person alive, but I'm starting to discover that as I move along, because when I first got in touch with the sutra, it was very lengthy, and especially when we got towards the end of, for example, when we got to the 14th exercise or the 15th exercise on seeing no birth and no death and seeing the impermanent nature of life and things like that, it gets very heady and it gets very, oh my goodness, so how do I practice that? So we won't get into that today, maybe hopefully later in the retreat, but we will get into some quite important aspects of the sutra. One thing is, it's important to understand the sutra, but then again, it's even more important to practice the sutra. See what works for us. So we might find something that doesn't necessarily work for us. It's okay. Move on to what works for us. But this sutra is something very relatable to our practice. So the first 4 exercises, just to go over what we learned yesterday, is the first exercise is to identify our breathing. So being aware of the in-breath and out-breath. If it's a long breath, if it's a short breath, what happens naturally? Just recognize it. We identify it. Second exercise is to follow. To follow your breathing. Really follow your breathing from the beginning to the end. Don't cheat yourself. Don't cheat yourself with your breath. Just follow it. Allow it to flow in and out naturally. And the third exercise is to be aware of your body. Our body is the vessel of our practice. Our body will tell us what's going on. Our body will tell us if we feel good. Our body will tell us if we're stressed. Our body will tell us many things. And so just being aware of the body. So once we've identified the breathing, we be aware of our body, aware of any tensions, any stress we may have. For me, my first place, I start to tense up in the shoulders. And then when I'm really stressed, my digestive system goes like this. I don't know how to, I would say haywire, but it just kind of does this. And then I know I'm stressed. And then I know I need to do something about it. And then, so I become aware, okay, where is my body? Then I bring my attention, or I bring my breath to that area of tension. And then the fourth exercise is to calm the body, to relax the body. Allow yourself to relax. Allow your breath to help you to relax. Relaxation is an important part of practice. I listened to a talk from Thay a couple of weeks ago, and we're in our 90-day range retreat. And Thay had shared a phrase that really resonated with me. He shared that meditation is not only meditation of our mind. So sometimes we think that when we're sitting or practicing sitting meditation, we're dealing with our issues in the mind. So we're just focusing a lot of stuff in the mind. But meditation is also more than that. Meditation is also meditation of the body. So not only are you breathing to relax and calm your mind, which we'll talk about today, but first thing to do is to come back to the body. Breathe with your body. Breathe with your toes. Breathe with your arms, your legs. Breathe with every entity of your body. Maybe we haven't experienced that before, and so when we feel like a sensation, it feels kind of awkward, especially when we first start to practice. But breathe with your body, calm your body. And when you calm your body, you start to be able to see the things that arise, any feelings that arise, any roots that cause any tensions in our body, anything that arises in our mind. The fifth exercise is cultivating joy. Breathing in, I feel joyful. Breathing out, I feel joyful. So, cultivating joy is something, joy has like a experience factor to it. So for example, if we had a long day at work and we come home, we know that we're gonna have 5 minutes of sitting meditation for ourselves because we know it feels good, or 5 minutes to relax. When we actually get a chance to relax, we feel joyful. We feel the excitement or the joy that comes. So joyful is different than the next exercise, which is cultivating happiness. Is the sixth exercise, is we cultivate happiness. Happiness is the actual, I feel happy. We're happy when our body is healthy, when we have the good conditions to be alive, food to eat, water to drink, a roof over our head, clothes to wear. Just recognizing these little happinesses or these little conditions of happiness allows us to feel happy. Joy and happiness are very important in our practice, in meditation practice. And usually the first tendency we tend to do is we want to get straight into the suffering. And I'm guilty of that as well. And so, when we suffer, we want to get straight into it. But can you imagine getting into your suffering with an unhappy mind? Maybe it may be easier to get into your suffering with a more happy mind. So allow yourself to be happy. Allow yourself to feel joy. As practitioners, we overlook this fifth and sixth exercise the most. Because we're like, oh, I don't need to feel joy. I don't need to feel happy. I just want to go straight into my feelings. And then once we get straight into our feelings are like a blender. And it blends us up and then it throws us out. And so happiness can help reinforce ourselves in our practice. So don't underestimate the power of happiness, the power of feeling joy, because this helps us to have transformation when we have a happy mind. So find your conditions of happiness. It's important to have a happy mind when we're taking care of our feelings. And those who practice meditation, you should know how to cultivate joy and happiness in order to truly help yourself in the world. So don't overlook those. Before you get into your feelings, get into your happiness first. seventh practice or the seventh exercise. That's not a 7. Is aware of your feelings. Bringing awareness to your feelings. So breathing in, I'm aware of this feeling that I'm feeling. I may be feeling peace. I may be feeling joy. I may be feeling happiness. I may be feeling anxious. I may be feeling angry. So aware of that feeling. Allow yourself to be aware of the feeling that arises. And feelings come in many shapes and sizes. We have our pleasant feelings, we have our negative feelings, and we have our neutral feelings. So whether it arises through your body or your mind, just bring attention to it. Bring it awareness. Allow yourself, oh, I see you. Hello, my anger. Hello, my happiness. Hello, my peace. I see you. And the 8th exercise is calming the feelings. Calm feelings. So similar to the body, once we're aware of our body, what happens to our body in the first 4 exercises, the next is our feelings. Once we become aware of our feelings, we calm our feelings. We take care of our feelings. So if we're feeling pain, it's not just our emotional feelings, but it's also in the body. If we're feeling pain, relieve the pain. There may be times when we're sitting for a very long period of time and our foot falls asleep, especially during sitting meditation. And sometimes we think we need to force ourselves to sit the whole time. But actually, sitting meditation should not be a fight or a struggle. We should allow ourselves to relieve the pain. It should be enjoyable. The practice should be enjoyable. That's the kind of the bottom line of everything, is the practice should be enjoyable. So do what you need to do to enjoy the practice. So not force yourself to sit for an hour when you know you can't. And it's okay. And allow that yourself to embrace any pain, embrace any emotion that may arise. So you may have a very difficult feeling in yourself. Maybe this feeling of anger. Allow yourself to embrace that anger and allow yourself to calm the anger. We may not necessarily find a solution to the anger yet, but calm your anger down first. And then we'll get into these next 4 exercises, which will hopefully help us to transform or take care of our anger. So it's important for us to embrace any feeling of pain, whether it be physical or internal, so that we can find some relief. We need to find some relief. So calming doesn't mean suppressing. So we're not suppressing our anger. We're giving it acknowledgement and we're calming the anger. Not suppressing, just calming it down so that we can find some relief. Because sometimes anger or jealousy or even happiness can be overwhelming. So we need to calm down, allow ourselves to calm our feelings down. So these next 4 exercises get into these next 4 get into what we call caring for our mind. So this is kind of the mind part. So the first was the body. The second set of 4 is the feelings. And this third set is the mind. So how do we care for our mind, or how do we liberate our mind? This one is going to be very fun. Care or liberate the mind. So you may hear the monastics or many people share that in order for us to have love or compassion for something, we need to understand. We need to understand what that person is going through, what that situation is, in order for us to have compassion. So, for example, if I have somebody who, let's have a story. If so, for example, Thay, he shares this story about I don't know if you know the fruit, the durian. I don't know if you guys know what durian is. Have any of you guys ever had durian? Okay, good. Do you guys like it? No? Okay, all right. It's considered a delicacy in Asia, and it's a very acquired taste and smell. And so Thay, he does not like durian. And so don't feel bad if you don't like it. But it's a delicacy, especially in Southeast Asia. So usually when friends, they come visit for a retreat or come visit our teacher, especially if he's on tour, they would offer durian as a gift. Because I love durian, so I want to offer you my most favorite thing, or the most delicate thing that this land has to offer, so I offer you durian. And like when Thay sees durian, because he shares this story about when he was a young novice, and when he would used to chant, and he would have, as a young novice, we would usually offer fruits to our altar in the temple, and they had a piece of durian on the altar. So what Thay did, well, he couldn't stand the smell, so he like covered his nose, but he realized this is not the right way of chanting. So he took the bell and put it on top of the durian, and so just so that he can cover the smell of the durian. And so when these friends, so the moral of the story is that when the friends offered Thay the durian, they offered it with their compassion, but that compassion didn't have understanding, because Thay, he suffered so much when they offered the durian. And so we may find ourselves in a situation like this, where we may offer something, or someone does to us out of all of their love, but sometimes like we don't, it's like, I'm sorry, but like, I don't like that, but thank you so much. But we have to be, so it's important for us to understand. And so the reason why I say this, it's important for us to understand our mind, because myself included, that I think we struggle a lot, especially nowadays, with our mind. And what is our relationship with our mind? Sometimes our mind, we think it defines who we are, or our mind is the thing we struggle with the most, or we think that our mind is the biggest obstacle we have in order for us to have freedom. Another thing that I noticed for myself is, especially in the beginning, when I first started practicing, is that I wanted to take care of all of my suffering before I can be happy. So I put all of my suffering in a basket, and I'm like, I need to take care of you, before I can allow myself to be happy. And that's my mind playing tricks with me. So we have to be very careful of that, because we can be happy even while we have suffering. So suffering is actually quite essential to our happiness. If we haven't suffered, then we can't really say we have experienced happiness. For example, if we have a toothache, we suffer quite a lot. Can't eat, can't chew, hurts. But when we don't have a toothache, are we aware that we don't have a toothache? It brings us happiness when the toothache is gone, because we've experienced that pain, or what happens when we can't eat, because we've experienced that pain. So it's important for us to understand our mind. And so our mind is made of what we call mental formations. So formations come in many different things. So formations like in science, and in no way am I a scientist, or in no way am I a psychologist. I'm just a monk, just trying to figure things out. So like formations come in many different ways. So science says, like when matter comes together, the work of atoms and matter comes together, we have a formation like a book. This is a formation. This cushion is a formation. This flower is a formation of what we call non-flower elements. We'll get into that much later. But these are formations. So that is what makes the paper, the trees, or whatever makes this notebook. It just didn't pop up out of nowhere. Is a formation. And so our mind is made up of what we call mental formations. So breathing in, number 9. I think my pen is dying on me. My marker. I am aware of my mental formations. So being aware of these mental formations that arise. So like the mind is made of mental formations, it's like how a river is made of water. It's very similar. So in the Buddhist tradition, we have what we call 51 mental formations. So there's, yesterday, Sister Trie gave us a little diagram. Of our consciousness, or what the elements of the mind. And so we have here what's called the store. Then we have our mind consciousness. Then we have these other consciousness, which is our ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and body. And then we have our fun guy here, which is manas. Very fun. So we have to be aware of any mental formations that arise. So in Buddhist tradition, we like to say mental formations are also kind of the seeds that our sister was talking about yesterday. But we have our positive seeds. So like seeds of compassion, seeds of love, seeds of nonviolence, loving kindness, insight. We have our negative seeds, which are fear, anger, despair, discrimination, etc. We also have mental formations that are either positive nor negative. For example, the seed of thinking. Thinking is neither positive nor negative, or it can be either positive or negative. So we have, what's called right thinking, or thinking positively. Or we also have negative thinking, maybe the thought of suicide, or the thought of having compassion. And so these are things in our mind, our mental formations that can come in our mind. So we have to allow first to calm our feelings in order for us to be aware of these mental formations that arise in our mind. So we have to be aware of what comes up in our mind. So for example, we have that image of anger. So for example, when we see something with our eyes and it makes us angry, we're watering the seed of anger, watering it, and then it comes up to our mind. Anger. So anger then comes up to our mind. It's important for us not to suppress this anger down when we have it. So we can see ourselves, oh, I don't want to be angry, things like that. So I'm forcing my anger to come down again. But what that's doing is it's creating a barrier with our store when we're forcing it down. We're forcing our anger down. But what we continue to see, it's still watering the seed so that it can, and what it's doing is it's rooting even stronger within our store consciousness without us even knowing, because we're suppressing. And when we suppress, it actually gives us some bad circulation in our mind. Like our mind becomes stagnant if we allow ourselves to continue to suppress our anger. And sometimes when we are suppressing our negative mental formation, it comes back up much stronger because it's more rooted in our store and it comes back even stronger. And actually, we start to run away from our mental formation and we start to look for something. We start to hide away, run away from our mental formation. So it's important for us to understand that what we are watering through these consciousnesses, we try not to suppress this anger. And what helps us to not suppress this anger is the energy of mindfulness. So mindfulness is also a mental formation. So we can invite mindfulness, whether it be through our body or through our mind, our nose. We can invite this energy of mindfulness to come up. Actually, let's do this. I'm also not an artist. Yeah, so we have mindfulness here. So we can invite mindfulness to come up and embrace our anger. Mindfulness won't fight anger. Mindfulness won't suppress our anger. So any good practitioner, they can invite mindfulness to come up. And that's through our practice of breathing, our practice of walking. If we're diligent in these practices, we can allow mindfulness to come up in any moment. Because also, mindfulness is not a tool. It's a way we live our life. So if we're living our life in mindfulness, when this moment of anger comes up, we're ready for it. We can embrace it immediately. And when we do this, our mind has good circulation again. It doesn't become stagnant anymore when we invite mindfulness to come up and embrace whatever comes up in our mind, even happiness. We can be aware of this. So being aware of any mental formation that comes up in our mind. The next practice or exercise is what we call gladdening the mind. So, very much like making ourselves happy, we can glad our mind, we can make our mind happy. How do we do so when we're suffering? So, when we gladden our mind, we're giving ourselves strength. We're giving ourselves the vitality, the energy to take on our mental formations. Diligence is a very important practice when it comes to gladdening our mind. And so there are characteristics of diligence. So there's 4 characteristics. The first one is not to give an opportunity for these negative seeds to come up. So we know we have negative seeds. They're a part of us, but we don't give it an opportunity to come up. That may mean the environment that we're in. Are we in a positive environment? Are we in an environment that waters these negative seeds? If we're in a positive environment, we don't allow these negative seeds to arise. For example, we're here at the monastery. If we're practicing according to the 5 mindfulness trainings or just through the community's energy, maybe before we came, we may have struggled with an addiction. But being in this environment, we see everyone practicing, it supports us. And so we're not doing the action of what we were addicted to. So that's not allowing these negative seeds to arise. That's the first exercise. The second exercise of diligence is if in case a negative seed arises, we try to bring that negative seed down as quickly as possible. Not forcing, but we try to bring it down as quickly as possible. One way we can do this is we can invite another seed to come up. We can invite a positive seed to come up. Maybe we can invite, if we're angry, we can invite the seed of compassion or a seed of love to come up. It's like when we're listening to a very bad song and we keep on listening to it, we can just press the next track. We can just skip the next track. So it was a teaching to change the CD or change the peg. So we just change to the next track. There's no reason to listen to a terrible song or continue to listen to it if we're not forced to. But usually there's no reason to continue to listen to a very bad song continuously. So just press the next track. So that's allowing it to come down. The third exercise of diligence is for the good seeds, allow them plenty of opportunity to arise. So like the negative seeds, we try to not let them arise. But for the good seeds, we try as much as we can to have them come up in our mind. So if you feel nourished in an environment like this, try and make time to come more often. Or if you're not able to, bring a mindfulness bell home. Or practice in an online Sangha. Here at Magnolia Grove, we have an online Sangha every Thursday. And so if you feel you need connection with community, there are many different types of ways to bring the practice home, if you know that that's what you need, or to water the good seeds. So the third exercise is we try to find ways for these good seeds to continue to arise. So now I'm allowing my seed of compassion to arise, or my seed of love to arise. And when we allow these seeds to arise, which is, now we move on to the fourth exercise of diligence, is we try to keep the good seeds in our mind as long as we can. So unlike the negative seeds, we try to get rid of it or bring it back down. Not get rid of it, bring it back down. as quickly as we can. But for the good seeds, we try to keep it in our mind as long as we can. So it's like when a beautiful tree gets grown, and as it continues to grow up and we see the beauty, what it does, it is rooting more deeply into the soil. So when we allow the good seeds to be in our mind and grow beautifully, what it's doing, it is rooting itself more stronger in our soul consciousness. And then we start to find transformation. This is what we mean by when we say transformation at the base. We're doing a lot of internal work. When we're keeping a positive seed here, we're actually doing a lot of transformation deep down in our store. Our storage is reorganizing itself, keeping the good and being aware of the negative, but also trying not to water it as much. And when we keep it in our mind, this flower will continue to grow into something even more beautiful. Yeah, let's get rid of this idea. Yeah. Right. But the same thing can be said about anger. So if anger gets and stays in our mind, like we said, the roots, it just continues to grow stronger. And it's transforming as well, if we allow it to. That means it's reorganizing itself to be priority in our storage. So we want to be very careful. So always be mindful of that. Let us listen to a sound of the bell. So I want to talk very briefly about this very fun topic, which is called manas. I think our sister mentioned that maybe someone would talk about it, and so I will talk about it a little bit. So manas. So this is what we call the seventh consciousness. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is eyes, ears, nose, body, mouth, consciousness. Our mind is the sixth. Manas is the seventh. And our store is the eighth consciousness. Manas is very, very funny, very tricky. And so everything sounds good, but manas is going to sound something very, let's just get into it. Let's get into it, because it's very fun. So manas has its characteristics that it likes to do. Okay, so the first characteristics, I'm just going to write, I apologize if it's too small, if you can't read it, is survival instinct. Or it can also be the will to live, or like vitality. So manas, it has the characteristics to live, or it's that consciousness part of our mind that has the will to live, the survival instinct, the preserving what it considers as a self, or what clinging to life. Manas also has the instincts to protect itself when it feels threatened. So the survival instinct. It also has 7 characteristics. The second one being it likes to appropriate a self. So what Manas will do, since it's kind of like here in your store consciousness and in your mind consciousness, it will actually cling to some things in your store consciousness, to some seeds in your store consciousness, and it will claim it as its own. So sometimes we like to call Manas like the lover or like the beloved, the consciousness that is like the lover. Something it likes to cling onto some things in the store and claim it as itself. So it gives it a self. So for example, it will give it the illusion of a self. So like it will say that even though we have all of these seeds of anger or compassion or love inside of us, it say, oh, that's me, that's who I am. I am love. I am a compassionate person. I am an angry person. I am a person that discriminates a lot. I am a person that doesn't discriminate a lot. So Manas will take on this role of what is kind of like profiling, per se. So it's like it's going to take on some kind of role, and it's going to be like, that's me. That's who I am. The third characteristic of Manas is pleasure seeking. So Manas is always looking for some type of pleasure. It's always looking for something, trying to fill a void. It's that part of our mind that if we're feeling some kind of emotion or a void inside of us, maybe we feel a void, maybe, if we feel something, then we tend to go look for some type of pleasure to feel it. For example, we open the fridge but we're not hungry, kind of thing, or we're feeling angry, we go for the tub of ice cream. And if we're not mindful, we can see it as, instead of enjoyment, we're feeling some type of void. The fourth is Manas likes to avoid pain or suffering. Avoid pain, suffering, or any kind of hardships. So Manas is very afraid of dying, hunger, abandonment, loneliness. But we also have to see that actually pleasure seeking and avoiding pain kind of connect with each other a bit. So sometimes when we're seeking for pleasure, we may be trying to avoid some kind of pain inside of us, this painful emotion inside of us. And so they're quite connected, this pleasure seeking and avoiding pain. The fifth characteristic of Manas is it doesn't see the dangers of pleasure seeking. So it's like your mind never feels fulfilled. And so it's always searching, it's always looking. And you actually continue to look and try to fulfill it without knowing the dangers. So, for example, you know something is harmful to you, but you continue to do it because you're seeking or filling this void inside of you. So Manas does that. Manas doesn't know the danger that it might have. So for example, if we have an addiction to something, it may be a void. We're filling a void, but we continue to do it We know it's harmful to us, but we continue to allow ourselves to override and to consume in it. The sixth characteristic is it doesn't see the good of suffering. Suffering is very beneficial to us. Suffering, like I shared earlier, allows us to experience happiness. But what manas does, it doesn't see the good. When it sees suffering, it just runs away. It avoids, doesn't want to suffer. But sometimes we need to be in touch with our suffering in order to find true transformation and true happiness and peace. So it doesn't see the good in suffering. And the last one, the seventh characteristic, is it ignores the laws of moderation. So manas does not know how to say no. Continues to feed itself. Continues to look after, pleasure seek, and so forth. So manas comes off of something very interesting. We may think of it something more on the negative side, if we think about it. But actually, manas is a part of our consciousness. So we just can't get rid of manas. We just can't say, I don't want manas anymore. I don't want to continue pleasure seeking. I don't want to, I want to see the good in suffering. So we can train ourselves in such a way, we can educate manas through our habit energies, through the way we live our life, through our mindfulness practice, through our concentration, and we can re-educate manas to help us. Because manas is necessary for us to have this wisdom of non-discrimination. For example, manas is helpful in the case of if we're thirsty and we need water, manas will find water for us. It's that survival instinct. If we don't have manas and we're thirsty, we're just going to dry up. So that's like a simple way of putting of why we need manas. And that's why manas is just so important, a part of our consciousness. So it's not something we get rid of. It's something that we educate ourselves in. And our mind consciousness helps us to moderate manas. Our mind helps us to moderate what goes on. So like example, we're still seeing the seeds. We're still seeing what comes up. But our mind is giving rise to what's happening in our mind. And seeing what we need to keep in our mind, what we need to bring down back into the store. So manas can help us with this wisdom of non-discrimination. And it can help us to have peace and joy. There's another image that I will draw very quickly to give maybe a better representation of what manas is. Erase this. Excuse me. It's supposed to be a lotus bud. So manas is down here in the roots. And we have our mind consciousness. And this is actually the fruit or the flower or this wisdom of non-discrimination. the flower, the bud. So manas is down here in the roots, but it's giving source to the stem, which is our mind consciousness, which then gives us this wisdom of non-discrimination. But in order for us to have this, we need to have this practice. We need to strengthen our practice of mindfulness, concentration, and insight, which moves us to the 11th exercise. Which is concentrating our mind. And then the 12th is liberating our mind. So if we have a strong mindfulness practice, we actually are cultivating and strengthening our concentration. I don't know if you noticed the stained glass back there. It says mindfulness, concentration, and insight. So mindfulness is the first step. Cultivate your mindfulness in order for you to concentrate your mind. Allow your mind to have concentration. And if we can maintain this energy of mindfulness throughout our daily life, then our concentration grows. Our concentration goes stronger. So we're able to have solidity and stability in our daily life with our mindfulness practice, because it's cultivating our concentration. And when you're concentrated, you actually discover life much more deeper. So like I shared this morning when I saw friends enjoying nature, being in the grass, being in the sun, taking away from maybe the sense of speaking, and other senses are heightened, that means you're concentrating on not speaking, but then your other senses are more concentrated. And so you have more awareness. And so you discover life in a different way. So for example, if I'm walking mindfully in the forest and I have my concentration, I see that I'm connected with the forest. I see that I am no different than this tree. But then again, this tree is my sibling. The squirrels, the birds, the deer, they're my siblings. And I share this earth with them. It's one thing to understand it and to accept it. It's another thing to practice it. So we need to cultivate our practice of mindfulness and concentration so that we can have this insight, this wisdom. And when we have this strong mindfulness and concentration, we will have a breakthrough. Insight will arise. And freedom is the fruit of our concentration. We can find freedom through our concentration. There's this image of it's like the sun, and it's like the rays beaming down here, and then like you have a magnifying glass, and when you have a magnifying glass to the sun, it has like a point. And if you keep it there long enough, and you put like a piece of paper, it may burn the piece of paper, and so forth with the magnifying glass. And so that's like our mindfulness, and we're concentrating it to one point. We can burn, or we can liberate ourselves through our afflictions, just through the practice of concentrating our mind. So we need to cultivate our practice of mindfulness in order to have deeper concentration. And concentrating our mind helps us to liberate our mind, which may seem very impossible if we're suffering, or if we're feeling we're going through a lot of hardships in life. But it's very similar to being aware and calming our feelings, but actually concentrating the mind and liberating our mind is another step farther than actually aware and calming the feeling. It's going another step. We're going deeper into our practice. We're finding true transformation and liberation in our practice, in our daily life. So there are many practices that we can do to cultivate our concentration. So like there's many different types of concentration. So like there's the concentration on the three doors of liberation, of emptiness, signlessness, or aimlessness. There's the concentration on impermanence. There's the concentration on no self. There's the concentration on cultivating compassion, interbeing. There are many different ways we can contemplate and concentrate our mind. But concentrating is one thing. Like I shared earlier, many of us, we understand what impermanence means. We understand that, not everything is permanent. Life is impermanent. We understand that we are of the nature to die. We understand that this flower is also of the nature to wilt. If we don't take care of it, nothing is permanent. We understand that. And we can accept it. I can accept that my life is like that. But are we practicing it? That's the part where we separate ourselves. Are we actually practicing it? Are we practicing this non-self practice? Do I actually see myself as your sibling? I can say it. I can agree with it. I can accept it. But do I see it myself? Do I see it? Am I practicing it? Do I see myself one with the earth? Do I see that with the recent storms, the hurricanes, that is no different than what is inside of me? I have my storms. Do I see I can cultivate compassion and joy for Mother Nature, for ourselves, for the world? And this 12th exercise also focuses on untying the knots in our mind. So when we think about liberation, we think of ourselves as something free. And so free from what? So usually we think about something that's tying us down, like a knot. How do we untie this knot inside of ourselves? And so these knots, they can either come from like our sorrows or our memories from the past, our anxieties concerning the future. We have about a month left. Feelings or irritation or fear or doubt in the present. Or confusion created from inaccurate perceptions. These are things that can be knots. So like an example is like our loved one, they do something that doesn't make us happy. We start to form a knot, even if it's small. We start to have like a small knot. And if we don't untie that knot when they do it again, the knot just gets tighter. And if we don't untie that knot, or the same knot, we see them do it again, even tighter. So it can actually be very harmful if we don't untie these knots. If we allow it to go stronger. Would they make the same mistake? So we have to be very mindful of what is happening in our seeds, what's going on in our mind, so that we can find true liberation. How do we untie the knots in our mind? See when you have that moment of irritation, to take care of it in that moment. Have faith. have confidence and have trust in yourself that you can do it. Because you can't. The Buddha was a human being, no different than us. And he experienced this path. Thay was our teacher. He walked the same path. He was able to find his peace. So we can too. And that's the positive side. That's thinking positively. Having faith in our practice that we can untie these knots. That we can find our liberation of the mind. We find our freedom. We're no longer bound by our mind. So, this is the importance of understanding our mind. When we understand our mind, we actually have more compassion for ourselves. It's very easy for us to find compassion for others. I'm guilty of this as well. Like, it's so much more easier for me to take care and love others and abuse myself. I have like this kind of mother seed as well to take care of everybody. But it's very easy to forget yourself. So it starts with understanding your mind first, understanding yourself in order to have compassion. So like the Durian story of having compassion without understanding, it's the same for ourselves. If we don't like durian, but we keep on getting ourselves around durian, we're just going to suffer. And we're not understanding ourselves. So this is why it's so important for us to understand. This is the Buddhist way of thinking, the Buddhist psychology way. There are many different ways. But when we understand what goes on in our mind, we have compassion for ourselves. We have love for ourselves. And when we have love for ourselves, that love, it illuminates to others. It becomes contagious with no effort. It becomes unconditional. When we walk or speak mindfully, it's an embrace of love and joy. So, similar to this lotus bud, on the bottom there's also what we call mud. So mud, lotus flowers, it needs mud in order to grow. So mud can also be suffering. So in order for us to have a beautiful flower, a lotus flower, we need to have some mud. So it's okay to suffer. It's a part of happiness. So thank you, dear friends, for listening. Let us listen to 3 sounds of the bell.